Folks, there we go. There we go. We're on the air. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I know the Zoom is out there. We'll probably have a lot of people on Zoom tonight for multiple reasons. One of them is about our gallon gasoline. And so I just want to welcome you all here. And I want to give Drew, our Executive Director, an opportunity to open the meeting. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks, Newton, and thanks for always being there for, coordinating this meeting with us, keeping your ears out there and eyes out there to know what exactly we need to talk about. And thanks, everyone, for coming. I look forward to the discussion. I always learn a lot while, we have this meeting. So let's get on with it, Newton, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Drew. As everyone knows, these are open meetings, forum meetings, and if you can come sit at the table, and if you don't sit at the table, there is one chair over here if you like, but you're still in the front row. We normally do a go around and just introduce ourselves, and we're going to do that again because we haven't been able to do that the last couple of meetings for different reasons. So I'd like to just start. Well, Drew, we already gone, and Roy.
Thank you, Newt. My name is Rory Feeney. I'm the Land Resources Bureau Chief here at the district.
I'm Larry Daniels, representing the Florida Airboat Association.
Bishop Wright, representing the Florida Airboat Association and the Youth Hunting Program of Florida.
Mike Elfenbein, Cypress Chapter of the Isaac Walton League.
Billy Boatwright, Florida Sportsmen's Conservation Association.
Steve Strode, FSCA.
Matt Nelson, FSCA.
Mike Prince, FSCA.
Tom McWaters, Florida Trapton Association.
Randy Turner, Florida Sportsman.
Mark Dombrowski, National Turkey Federation for Palm Beach Chapter.
Kerry Garceau, Youth Hunting Program of Florida.
Brad Fontaine, I'm the FWC Public Hunting Area Biologist for the South Region.
I'm BJ Cattell. It's good to be back on this go around. Tonight I'm representing an environmental company, Arthology.
I'm Blaine Preston. I'm the land management assistant here at the district.
James Harbaugh, recreational planner, South Florida Water Management.
Dan Cotter, section leader with Land Stewardship. And I just want to take a minute to introduce Blaine. He just started with us, Blaine Preston from DEP. And we're really excited to have him. You guys will probably be interacting with him a lot. He's got a variety of tasks, including managing our special use license permitting system for camping and be interacting with the public a lot and working on purchase orders for maintaining public use and land management tasks. So good to have you on, Blaine.
I'm Steve Coughlin, the Land Stewardship Section Administrator for the district.
Hi, my name is Yvette Bonilla, and I'm a coordinator of this meeting.
Okay, we have a full agenda tonight. Everybody, be sure your cell phones are off. Speaking to the mic, to hold the button down when you speak. If it's not green, you're not being recorded, and that is important because these meetings are recorded and people do run them afterwards. Now, this is an open forum meeting. We do not make people go with a 3-minute rule or a 2-minute rule, but we have a soft gavel. And if you wonder along a while, since we're always out here by 8 o'clock, I don't think we've missed it but once in 15 years. But so feel free to raise your hand. You will be recognized and you will have plenty of time. If we have time at the end of the meeting, we normally make another go around where everybody gets a chance to make a comment about anything new they'd like to see done in the next meeting, or any new ideas or projects that they might be interested in. Those in Zoom, there's some things you should know. Members of the public who wish to comment may use the raise hand feature on Zoom. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, please go to our website, SFWMD.gov, and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page. Staff will assist you. If you're using a phone and would like to comment, please press *9, that will raise your hand, and *6 to mute and unmute. This meeting will be over by 8 o'clock. Okay, with that, we're ready to start the overview of the C25 Reservoir and Sta Restoration Project. And the first presenter is Beth Kavinsky. She's the lead product manager at South Florida Water Management District. Thank you, Beth.
Good evening. I'm going to give a presentation about the C25 Reservoir and Sta, which is the last of the structural components for the IRL South, Indian River Lagoon South SERP project. All of the others that are underway in design or construction, the C44 components, Reservoir and Sta, the C23 and C24 reservoirs, 2 reservoirs, and an Sta. So this is the final, and it is the smallest component. The location is in north central St. Lucie County, and the district has acquired about 1,583 acres for this property. It is located on the north side of the C25 canal and just south of Florida's Turnpike. So it's a relatively confined and not so easy to access property. Again, about 1,580 acres, which is slightly more than half again, the size of what the PIR recommended. There we go. So this project is intended to capture the first 0.4 of an inch of runoff from the C25 and Fort Pierce basins, and then hold that in the reservoir. It is supposed to provide about 5,300, almost 5,400 acre-feet of storage, and the expected total phosphorus removal is about 9,000 kilograms per year on an average annual basis, and nitrogen removal about 35.5 metric kilograms per year. Again, those are 3% and 2% of the base discharges to the Indian River Lagoon at the Fort Pierce Inlet. And then the average volume that would be pumped for salinity control would be about 44,000 acre-feet per year. Average annual for water quality, again, to get those phosphorus and nitrogen removal numbers would be about 27,500 acre-feet per year. And then finally, the reservoir would provide and be able to be discharged back to the C25 canal to provide irrigation water that would reduce reliance on the Floridan aquifer in that basin. This is a potential configuration. The project is currently going to design, and we're going to have our consultant look at trying to maximize the use of the property. Looks like it's shifted a little in the slide, which it shouldn't have done. This should be moved about a half a mile north. We'll pick up water from the C25 canal, discharge that water through the STA, and then turn it to the C25 canal. The PIR indicates that water will be discharged downstream of the S99 structure, and we're going to be looking at that in design and trying to see whether this configuration or some other configuration will work best for this site. Our intent is to use as much of the property as we can for this feature. And the schedule for this, again, we're starting design this year in FY22. We're hoping to get the scope of work through the Corps of Engineers reviews and have it executed next month. And then we go to design with the expectation that this would go into construction in FY24, and we would be complete in 2028 and go into temporary operational testing and monitoring in 2029. And that's it. Questions?
Okay, folks, any questions? Yeah, Mike?
What's there now?
Citrus Grove is on a portion of the property. They're growing lemons, and they're expecting to do their final harvest in May or early June. And then a portion of the property is fallow.
Anyone else? What's the expected depth of the reservoir? I know it's shallow water, but
Yeah, in the project implementation report, the expected depth is 8 feet, but we have a larger property here, and so there is an opportunity to either store more than is indicated in the PIR or go to a lesser depth.
okay, so is that the maximum depth, 8 feet? These reservoirs very rarely are at their maximum depth.
That's
year.
the maximum depth that's proposed in the PIR. And again, we'll have our consultant look at those numbers and determine what is the best use of this site. I don't think we'll go deeper than 8 feet, though.
Well, obviously, we look upon this for recreation. There's a lot of opportunity out there for probably some fishing, but maybe some duck hunting in time, gator hunting. You guys have any ideas on the STA? Is that going to be the normal 2 foot to 3 foot deep STA?
I would expect that would be the case. The STA, again, is not a large STA. In the PIR, it was proposed at about 163 acres. So there may also be opportunity to increase the size of that slightly.
Okay.
The beginning, you said the access is hard to get to.
Right, because the turnpike, it's bounded by the turnpike on the north, so there's no access from the north, and there's a bridge that is currently being built by the former landowner that is really the only access to the site across the C25 canal.
Yes, Mike?
Is recreation being considered for it currently? Yeah.
Yes.
So the district owns the property right now currently?
Yes, we acquired it in December.
Okay, and then assuming with the reservoir, you're going to put a dike around it, correct? Or a dam around it? Will that be
Correct.
accessible to the public?
Again, we still need to have conversations about the accessibility and how it will be used in the future for recreation.
So basically, any SERP project that there is a recreational component, and it is a authorized SERP, Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan project, and so it's part and parcel to having the project is you need to figure out your recreation. But there's usually a whole public process to develop the recreation plan and management plan once we get closer to knowing what it looks like.
The need to these things, we have to look at it like now. It has to be parking. There has to be parking. There has to be access, and there has to be a gate that's locked or unlocked. And those parking pads, they have to be in the early plans. And do we know if the parking pads are in the early plans for this project?
Doing as part of the design of the project, we'll look at that type of, the parking areas, how the public would access it. All that comes into play as part of the design. They're just not there yet.
The reason I asked that is because when they were the ill-famous EAA1 and EAA2 reservoir, when they were planning them and building them or getting ready to build them, they had all the plans. They had absolutely not a single place to put a boat in, either one of them. There was no parking. There was no boat ramps. There was actually no public access. And today, you see the FEB, which it changed, and you see the tremendous amount of places that was put into the plan, pads out there where you can launch boats and park all over the place. And that did not happen accidentally. A lot of work went into that. And the district spent a lot of money to do that. That's very much appreciated. And the EAA reservoirs, which are going to be deep water reservoirs, they actually were not going to allow anybody to put a boat in them and go fishing. And mind you, these two reservoirs would have been the 5th largest lake in all of Florida. And right on off of 27, all these bass boats running up the Okeechobee, going by the 5th largest lake in Florida full of fish, and they're not even allowed to put their boat in the water. And why was that? It wasn't the district's fault, it was the Corps' fault. The sides of the reservoir were designed to be like a bathtub. And the answer to the question about access was, you can't get out. So it's dangerous. If there's a storm, you can't get out. You can't climb the walls and get out. Now, mind you, that's the early plan sometime, and that's why we ask these questions. That's why we ask the questions. Well, long story short, we got that fixed. So you can get out and you will be able to fish, and there are boat ramps. And the district had a lot to do with that. The Corps they don't think like we do sometimes, you know. They think about building stuff and build it. They don't think about how the public's going to get in and out of them. And with the district's help, we were able to fix that. So that's why I asked the question. It wasn't just a question out of the way. Anyone else? Because this lady made a great presentation, and we want to be sure that she answers any questions that you have.
If there's anyone that would like to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Zoomers. Sorry, I have no hands raised.
Anyone out there on Zoom, right now is your last chance. Raise your hand. Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Beth. Just guarantee you the Zoom land light up now. Next presenter is Jim Harbaugh. He's the recreation planner for the district, and he's going to report to us on the STA updates, which includes a lot more than the hunting side of it, because there's a lot of STA activity going on beside the one south of the lake. Thank you, Jim.
All right, here we go. I'm here to give the updates on the STA hunting in for the last hunting season. And the overview for the STAs is, as the broken record goes, there was a lot of construction activities in the STAs, which reduced the amount of access and reduced the quotas. It made challenges for getting into the STAs just because of all the different routes and then all the vegetation that was being replanted. So there was a lot of the area that was closed off. But despite all these challenges, we were still able to have hunts. It would have been easy enough to shut these down completely, but we did not do that. The participation numbers were lower than they had been in the past, but overall, the hunters were successful. And I've got a bunch of graphs and a bunch of numbers and a bunch of scientific-looking things that will help show that the success rates were there despite their access problems. Excuse me. All right. STA 1, the expansion, was the only area that was open this year. And with that, there was a reduction in the overall amount of, I'm calling it scheduled access, meaning the hunts were only on Fridays. And Sundays, there were no hunts in the northern portion of the STA. So that reduced the amount of scheduled hunts, if you will, that we were able to have for the previous 2 years. It was a significant reduction. But when you start looking at numbers, and what I got here, and also should mention down here in this corner, there was a closure down there due to more construction of another pump. I think if it's a pump station, it's a water control structure down that way that we were not able to access down there. So an area that was already reduced in size was reduced even more, but we still did have a hunt. And that's the positive side of it. Given the amount of construction out there, that we even had a hunt out there is pretty phenomenal. The numbers here kind of reflect that as well. What this graph is representing is it's kind of a ratio, if you will. I have taken the effort, which is the hunter days, and I divided it into the harvest. And then you come up with a number. It's more or less a number of ducks per hunter accessing the STA. It's not a real accurate number because there's people who are entering the STA, they're not hunting, but it's people who are going in there assisting, and they are accessing the STA for purposes of either being a bystander or hunting in the property. So if you look at that numbers here, you see that, yes, there was a reduction over the first 2 years, but we also had a higher quota, more people we were able to get in, versus this year where it was cut down under half of what was in the previous years. But overall, they were still able to harvest ducks. Some of the slides coming up, you're going to see some numbers that I was kind of surprised at to see how much success there was compared to last year. Despite, this is STA 2, we had, again, another challenge of getting in there. Most of the STA was closed, but there were some areas that you were able to access. There's a lot more construction going on in there this year too, and the quotas were significantly cut from the previous 2 years, but they were the same as last year. But if you start looking at some of these numbers, the harvest at STA 2 was considerably higher than it was last year, and the participation was up too. People are moving around and trying to get into these STAs with some of the closures, and it reflects that here with the hunter effort to harvest ratio was up considerably from last year as well. So fewer people are getting in there, but they're still being successful. And in comparison to the 3 years ago, the success rates were almost as good, if not better, than they were even 4 years ago. STA 3-4, we had 2 cells that were closed. One of them was a new closure. Again, the numbers are showing the success rates of those who are able to get into the area and hunt are harvesting waterfowl. This is the highest number we've had, so it was a very successful year in the STA this year compared to even the last 4 years. So this was a really good STA this year. The hunter days or the participation was, generally about the same. So whether the ducks were just moving there or people were figuring out how to hunt in there, remains to be seen. I think it's part of it was people are figuring out how to hunt in that property. STA 5, this one saw a reduction in the number of people trying to hunt it. They were more successful than they were last year overall as a group, for the effort towards how many times they were getting in there. But it's definitely a decline that it was over the previous years. That is, how to explain that, I'm not 100% sure. But I do know that compared to last year, the success rates were higher than they were the year prior. So if you compare overall from the year to year, the only STA that saw maybe a reduction in the harvest effort would have been the STA 1 West, while as the other ones all saw a slight increase. We did have a couple of specialty hunts in the STAs, one west in the expansion area. There was 2 events in January for the Wounded Warrior Hunt. That was a fantastic event from what I understand. There was greeted really well. The participants had a great time. And then there was 2 youth hunts in the STA as well. Both of these are federally not mandated, but allowed, if you will. They are outside of the normal season. And the February 12th was the final kickoff. I attended that for a short while and I had to go. I had another issue at someplace else, but that was a fantastic event. I'm glad I went to it. The food was phenomenal. The people there were good. And it seems like everybody was having a good time. It was kind of indicative of the spirit of the hunting and the STAs. Everybody enjoys being able to have access into there. I'm going to switch gears a little bit from waterfowl, and I'm going to go into the alligator season this year. We did have 2 STAs that we did not have gator hunting in this year, STA 2, and then the one west, we did have hunting in there, but the north cell, just like in the waterfowl season, that was also closed to do construction. So some of these challenges created either reductions or no harvest at all because they were completely closed. STA 1, the alligator management unit is divided into 2 units in that STA. You got the north and the south. The south portion of the STA was still open for gator hunting, while the north, which would be cell 5B, was closed. And these numbers here, what I'm trying to represent here is they have the allowable harvest, which is based off of the quota. So if you have 100 people or 150 people that were able to get into the STA that were given permits to hunt in there, they are each allowed to hunt or harvest 2 alligators on that permit. So that would be the allowable harvest. And these numbers, what they're representing is the percentage of the allowable harvest that was taken out of the STAs. So, and then this point right here is a great example. 100 permits were issued in the south. 74% of them were harvested. So 74 gators came out of that. They just worked out really well with that number because it's on 100. And so this kind of gives an indication as to what is going on with the harvest in there. It's not showing any decline. One would expect that, that as you keep pressure on, so these STAs are continuously producing alligators that can be harvested. STA 1 West, the southern portion did see a slight decline, while the rest of them saw a slight increase in the harvest where we were able to get into STA with the north and the STA 2. There was no harvest, there was no quota that was set for those, so obviously there was no ability to harvest. If you look overall in the total number here, 1% minus these 2, I know I understand that the big difference, but the difference between one year and the other, from last year and this year, there was actually the harvest success rates were pretty similar overall in all the STAs. This is another way of looking at that. This is actual numbers of gators that were harvested out of the STAs. The blue and the gray lines are the quota numbers, whereas the orange or the yellow are the numbers. And again, you can see that there was a slight increase in each one where we did have some ability to get in and take the gators. These 2 obviously didn't have any. This one did see the decline again, as I mentioned. That's pretty much the overview of the past hunt in the STAs. This hunt here is something that is proposed for the future, STA 1 East. I know there's a lot of people that are really looking forward to this. We're still in some of the preliminary stages of securing a gator hunt in here. There's some construction concerns in here that we have to work through. But going forward, there was a mercury test that is required by FWC that if you're going to have a hunt in there, they have to be below a certain threshold. And the test results came back and they were well below the threshold. They were very favorable. Mercury levels are pretty low in the gators overall. So that's a good thing. It's a good beginning. In the near future, we don't necessarily have time to get quota set with FWC for harvest in this STA. The window of opportunity is it's rapidly closing upon us, so we're not able to get that information out and get everything in place so we can have a full-blown gator season coming up this August. It's only, I can't believe it's only 5 months away already. So we may possibly open it up for some of the specialty hunts. There's a process we have to go through to be able to have hunting on the STAs. One of them is the approval by the board and other bunch of process that I'm not 100% all familiar with, as I'm relatively new to the position yet. That is mostly what I got for my presentation. And then this was a picture was given to me by Carrie. Thank you very much for that photo. Thank you for the photos. I like photos. This is a great photo. Was not necessarily on the STA. It was over at the PUI, but it was such a good picture, and it was indicative of the Youth Hunt program. Thank you very much for providing me that photo, and I think it's a great way to end the presentation. If you have any questions, let them fly.
All right, thank you, Jim. Do anyone here have a question? Yes, sir. Please come up and use a microphone. Here, there's a chair right over here. If you'd like to sit down.
If you could go back to the slide where you were showing the access schedule changes.
To which STA?
To STA 1 West. So I just kind of did the math here, and it looks like we had 35% decrease in access. But looking at the harvest numbers, we're looking at like an 83% decrease from 2019-20 to this year. Do you have any idea why we would see such a huge decrease in harvests?
From, you mean just from the this year, 2021 to 2022, from this year to this year, 80% here? Or are you talking from?
From 1920. So we went from almost 12,000 harvests down to about 2,000.
We also had 160 quota access for 160, so that was 90 of the points being able to get in that were, go ahead.
Would you state your name so we have it?
Sure, it's Mark Barton.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to skip that formality. There was a significant reduction in the access to that property as well. 80%, there's a access into this STA is a little more challenging because we have considerations with the vegetation in there. We can't access to cross the flow, which reduces some of the ability to hunt the entire STA, which if you aren't able to get up into some of the areas that even though you have it open, a lot of hunters weren't able to get into it because of the access restrictions that we have for the vegetation considerations.
So the reason that I'm asking is, we're obviously seeing, yes, there was a reduction in the number of quotas, but the number of harvested ducks is way lower than that. And I wonder, do you think that the new way of doing the walk-in quotas, we used to have walk-in lotteries, and now it's this new system where you have to apply online, and then you may or may not be able to get in. And it's been my understanding that a lot of the quotas have not been getting filled because of that. Is there any chance that we're going to get walk-in lotteries back?
I can't answer that to the effect. The access is the how the quota is administered is by FWC. We work with them on that, and to make those changes, I would have to work with FWC, and I don't know what we can do to improve that for your needs of what you're looking at. I understand what you're trying to get to, and it's not a perfect system. It is a system that is showing that we are doing what we need to do in order to keep success rates at a higher level, versus if we just let more people in a smaller space, those success levels would go down. So in some regard, it is working, but is it 100% perfect? Well, good luck having anything that's going to be 100% perfect. There is going to be some flaws in some things, yes. And some of this access with the quota, the walk-in quotas, I'm not familiar with it enough. I'm going back to it. I don't think we're probably ever going to be going back to that same system. And they've made some adjustments to allowing people coming in if they were late Like if they were in line, to go get out there, and then they made some adjustments to that too. It's a moving target. It's hard to pinpoint everything and anticipation of everything, but we're doing the best we can. I can tell you that. So that's what I got.
Thank you.
Good questions. Anyone else here?
Newton, I would just add one other thing. A lot of the duck numbers in the STAs have changed across the years as the vegetation's changed as well. So sometimes when you look at the participation based on the number of quotas, that's a better indication of the quota system, the check station. I think if we look back in those earlier years across most of the STAs, we saw much larger numbers of ducks that were out there. And I think, Newton, you picked up on that across the years as well. A lot of it has to do with the flyaway, what goes on in adjacent lands, some of the flooded rice fields out there as well. So there's a lot of factors that all come together.
Yes.
I think we understand that these are, scientific projects first. But I want to thank the district for making sure that the recreation is still ongoing. And it's one of the things we talked about when we first tried to get these opened is we understand there was going to be, changes and moving the people around and quotas changing and everything else. But the district has really held up to their end of the bargain to allow us continued use into these projects. And sometimes it gets uncomfortable for us, but the bottom line is we are so glad we have the opportunity. So we do want to make sure that we're thanking the people, especially staff and everybody involved in keeping these open as much as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Bishop.
So STA 1, the alligator hunt, is there some way we can do a special draw quota, or is it going to be out this year? We're looking at next year. What are we
talking
looking
this
at?
the new one east? We are still in the very conceptual point. There are a lot of things that have to be worked out. Getting approvals is one of them. These are kind of some of the unknowns as to how fast we can get some of this done. I don't know. I'm not foreseeing it being able to have a full-blown regular hunt in the STA because one, we have to have FWC is the one that sets the quota numbers in there based upon habitat, and they haven't. We're not giving them enough time because we don't have public hunting in the area yet. So they haven't been working on this. We haven't been pushing it either.
We're looking forward to a good youth hunt in there too.
Yeah, it will be an exceptional youth hunt in there for the youth hunt program, and the Wounded Warriors. I think we have a phenomenal situation in there that would be very successful.
Yeah,
I said this before. I'm going to say it again. Someone needs to introduce the Wounded Warrior crew to Dupree. It's really, there's some big alligators in there. They even made the social media page this week, the big alligators in Dupree. And, you can't, or we need to figure out how the public can go in there and draw them on a Palm Beach, Martin County tag. And I know because it's split, but, it's time that try to figure out how we can reduce some of them big alligators in there because they're just getting old in there. And so we need to figure out one way or the other. And with that said, or I guess the FSCA's got to figure out how to do a Wounded Warrior hunt. I don't understand it, but we've tried to stay out of the Wounded Warrior business. We stay busy with the youth hunting program, but something needs to happen in there.
We can work on that, Bishop. And, for STA 1 West.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just had a question regarding the parking spaces. I've seen in my experience drastic changes in the vegetation and spots that were great years ago that are almost inaccessible now, but still have a parking number by them. What's your criteria for looking at those or reevaluating them like as the years go?
About duck hunting, right? Okay. I've planned when this is done to address a few of these issues.
I didn't hear what he said. Not what he said. But anyways, how we are assessing the locations. Myself and I've gone out there with Newton and FWC, and we look at the old access points. Are they ideal? Not necessarily in some instances because you have to work to get through the cattail. But it's probably, what we're looking at is the proximity to some open water, so that there is be the ability to harvest a waterfowl, because if you're surrounded by cottontail, obviously you're not going to be able to do anything, or have the ability to recover game as you are shooting it. And sometimes you're going to have to work through to get the cattail to get into some of these more open areas, and it's becoming more and more difficult next to the levee because the cattail is taking hold so well in there. But these are some of the best access points with the regards to water flow, that we're not going to have any damage to the vegetation overall. We could put a path through there, but we're not going to, and new plantings, if there's any new plantings, we avoid those. And while it's not the easiest of, especially if you are out there the first week, to break ground the first time, then it's very difficult. But as the season goes on, there's a path that is made. There has been some discussions as to what we can do to make it a little easier, but nothing has been firmed up on any of that.
Do you look at that each year, or how often?
Yes, we look at it each year. Prior to the season, we start looking at last year's points and if we can expand upon them. But as you know, the vegetation doesn't necessarily get less in any area. And if it does get less in any area, it's because there is a problem of some type of cross current or a short circuit is what they're calling it. And then we can't have access through those short circuits because they're putting new plantings in. So when you're going through and you see an area that looks like it should be really easy to go through, that's a red flag right off the bat that there may be an issue why we shouldn't access in there, because there's already some damage that's it's not done by the hunter, but just by natural flows, other unforeseen things, whether it be insects, overspraying something that created a short circuit in there. And there's likely going to be new plantings in there, and we prefer to stay out of those because they just spent an exorbitant amount of energy and time to put those in there. So I see where you're going, but you'd like to see find a little easier access. It's difficult to have the perfect world where we have it's accessible and not do the damage, and then also have it easy. When we're looking at these areas, we're trying to find that blend. And then there's some areas you can see open water, that's a quarter mile away, and that's why we don't put those in. We're trying to find something that we can get up on the back of a truck and we can see that there's open water within a doable distance. Doable is kind of arbitrary. It's just, based upon the way we feel at that time. Also, it's difficult because a lot of times the water levels will be up when we're in there looking at it, because we're looking at them in July and August, maybe a little later. And then during the waterfowl season, the water levels are a little lower, and it makes it more challenging then too. So
I just want to say a couple of things about the parking. First of all, the premise with the SDAs, we all have to remember this. The SDAs are not built for the duck hunters. They're under a federal court order, and their job is to clean the phosphorus out of the water coming off the EAA. Then we work back from that. That's where we start. And the access we get is every bit of access we get, we're lucky to get it. And it's been that way for 20 years. The parking situation, which is your question, these guys worked hard. The FWC people worked hard. I rode around out there for hours, Jim and I, and the FWC people, trying to get as many hunters and permits on the property as possible. That means we're working with shrinking habitat because of the managers are in love with cattails right now. Reduction of marsh and SAV, which of course is where the ducks are. And we have to live with it as long as that philosophy is here. My personal opinion is the SDAs are not working, and they're not going to work as well as they did before until we get back to the program that Mother Nature had. And if you look out there at WCAs, you see it. The first third is cattails, the second third of the marsh is a mixed marsh, and the third area of the marsh down south below Everglades Holiday Park is beautiful grass and full of ducks and animals. As long as you operate that way, you're going to get clean water, because the water at the park right now is 10 parts per billion. Lower. Water in the park's 8. And it's not there because of the STAs. I hate to say it as much as I love the STAs. It's there because of the WCA. And some of you guys are out there on buggies and airboats and everything, and you see it. You know why that water is clean, because you see the dirty water hitting the north part, going to cattails, second part going to mixed marsh, third part, beautiful sawgrass marsh. And one day, the SDAs will be managed that way again. And the SDAs might meet that Q-Bell of 13 by 2026. That's going to be a challenge. Now, God bless these people. It's hard work. Everything they do has never been done before. No one's ever done this before. So you have to give these guys and ladies a lot of leeway to do what they do. Now, the reason 15% of the ducks in Florida were killed in the SDAs in 2016. 15% of all the ducks in the whole state were killed. Now it's down to nothing. And it's going to be that way a few more years. But we're going to struggle. And the staff works so hard, FWC and Water Management District staff, to get as many hunters out there as possible. And real quick, the other thing that is a problem is the construction. And again, the construction on STA 1 West, it basically closed 1 West down because the western portion doesn't have all that much good duck habitat. But the construction will be done and it will go away. And when it does, we'll have more area to go to. And I want to say thank you, Mr. Bergeron, for allowing us some access for the Wounded Warrior hunts and the youth hunts, which sent all them guys and ladies, I might add, home happy. And also it reduced the amount of effort to get them people out there on the marsh. Didn't have so many long paddles. So there's nothing but good things to say about the district and the staff. There's nothing but good things to say about the FWC, because it's just a difficult challenge. And we will do better. The district wants to do better. We have somebody on Zoom?
No, sir, no hands raised.
To answer the question. Oop.
Just one hand raised. John Monty?
Hey, Jim, how are you? It's John Monty. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Jim, I have a couple questions for you. When it comes to the A1 Fed and gator hunting, if I read that correctly, the permits are at 40. That's for 16,000 acres. STA 3-4 being right next door, 16,000 acres. The same amount of land is quadruple. Do we know why?
I don't really have an answer for that one.
John, this is Steve Coughlin. The A1 FEB was a constructed wetland, fairly new compared to some of these other STAs. So they started out with a very conservative number to begin with. It doesn't mean it can't be increased in the future. It is a large area. Access is a little more limited there. You don't have the cross canals going through there as much access into the interior as you do some of the STAs, but it's one of the things we can keep looking at. Make sure the number still fits and coordinate with FWC on their surveys.
Okay, thanks. And Jim, STA 1, was there any closures to any of the cells because of the pink flamingos showing up? Or was that all due to construction?
That would be due to the construction. You're talking STA 2?
No, STA 1.
STA 1? No, there's no flamingos that I'm familiar with in STA 1, but either way, the construction is the main reason for the closures. It's not just the construction within the cells, but it's also the haul routes between the cells. So they got to get point A to point B, and we don't want to have that conflict of the dump trucks and the vehicles on the levees.
Gotcha. Okay. when it comes to waterfowl hunting, I know you have a post-hunt meeting coming up, but I'd like, if at all possible, it's South Florida Water Management is the one that changed the permitting system for the morning hunts. I'm sure if you sit down with Brad or somebody and look at the data, you'll see how many permits actually went unused for the morning hunts because of the change in permit system. The system's failing the duck hunters. I challenge you to look at the amount of numbers of the permits that were available and the people that did not show.
That duly noted.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good to hear you. Okay, yes.
I just wanted to add a comment to the topic of, sorry. Oh, I just wanted to add a comment to the topic of the parking spaces. You mentioned that sometimes you'll see open water that's pretty far out, and for that reason, you won't put a parking space there. I don't want to speak for every duck hunter out there, but if there's widgeon or pintail out there, I guarantee you that duck hunters will find a reason or a way to get out there. And if they're cutting a path that's perpendicular to the flow in the STAs, I don't think it would be a bad idea to put a parking space there, because those hunters that are willing to put in the effort, they're going to do it anyway. And if you don't give them that parking space that will make them go perpendicular to flows, they will find a way, the shortest way in, which a lot of times means going to the inflow canal, the outflow canal, and cutting along, the same parallel to the flow. And so then you're just creating those short circuits. So I think if you see good habitat, just put the parking space in and let the hunters figure it out, because they're going to figure out a way to get there anyway.
Good point.
I'm going to rescue Jim.
You're going to rescue me.
Let me tell you, when a guy comes up there in the dark at 4 o'clock in the morning and he picks a parking spot and he hasn't been there and he doesn't know, and a high percentage of our SDA hunters, because of the draw system, they draw and get a permit and they come out there and they've never even been out there to scout. They've never been there before. You cannot allow that guy to pick a parking number where he cannot get to the open water easy or easier. I feel your pain. I've seen those long cuts through. I've made a few long cuts through the cattails. But we have to think, when we do the parking spots, we have to think about who the customer is. You're a well-versed duck hunter that knows the SDAs, and the average person we get out there has no clue. And even in the afternoon, if you give them one and they go out there and they look out there and they see 100 yards of cattails, they turn around and come back, and they're not happy campers. So the parking numbers, as I said a while ago, it is incredibly difficult and complex. We put 4 numbers now at spots we would never even put 2, because you can see that open water and you can get there. And I know it's difficult and frustrating for those of us who've been working on the SDAs for 20 years. But we're at a time when we're going to have to work through this. And always remember, SDAs are not built for duck hunting. And then you work backwards. So hopefully next year, One West, the construction will be a lot of it out of the way. That will open up a whole new areas that were closed this year. And it will make the whole situation a lot better. 5, unfortunately, is in real trouble because it's just too dry. They have no water down there. It doesn't get water from the lake, incidentally. I think it just gets it off the, was it C34 or something? C39, yeah. And that has been a problem. When they first built 5, it was the first one. The western sail just immediately went to Willis. I mean, it was so dry, it just went to Willis. So there's a lot of problems involved, but the opportunity still is pretty good. As you know, a lot of ducks were killed. It's just a lot fewer than what they used to be. So we're taking time on the SDAs because we're not going to have a recap meeting this year. That's why I'm taking a little more time with it. So anybody have any questions out there in Zoom land, this is the time if you want to talk about the STAs. Yes, sir.
And I just wanted to go back to STA 1 East. And Jim had said that we were waiting more or less on FWC to do kind of a survey to let us know, what we can do.
We're working with FWC to get a quota number, which we have to do that based upon habitat. And there's also approvals internally with the South Florida Water Management that we have to have done as well. So we have to first get the approvals on this end, then we can set the quotas, and then we can open it up for hunting.
Okay, so I agree with you that way, but I do want to make sure that, everybody understands that when we first set these up for the alligators, they were a little bit different for the ducks. Ducks, we want as many people as possible. Alligators, we wanted a little bit more quality because they were saying, more families can go out there. They don't have the boats and everything else, so you can get a little bit more family. But I went on every one of the alligator surveys, with the district, and we set the permits. When we went back to FWC, we were not as aggressive as what they would have been. So they agreed with the permits that we allowed because we also took into consideration the wounded warrior hunts. We took into consideration, the youth hunts that would be out there and how many alligators overall harvested for the year would come out. So I just wanted to just say that back to you, that if you want to go back and look at some of these, why we did certain things, maybe get with me offline, but we actually set the permit. We set the quota, not FWC.
That's good to know. There's a lot of history here that I'm still learning.
Okay, Zoom land is quiet. Anyone else here? All right, thank you very much, Jim. Good presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Dan Cotter, the section leader. And Dan will be speaking on public use project updates. And there's usually quite a bit of that. Thank you, Dan.
Pointer. Laser pointer?
Just put it on.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay, good evening, everyone. Dan Cotter with the Land Stewardship section of the Land Resources Bureau. Before I start real quick, I just want to thank James. It's really impressive what he's done. He's going on just about a year here being with us, and he's really jumped into a lot of big shoes to fill. A couple of guys I used to work with, one who's here tonight, BJ Cattell and Jerry Krenz. But anyways, I just want to thank James for everything he's doing and a good presentation. So I've got if you've all seen my presentations in the past, I usually jump around the entire district. We've got so much going on, so many good projects that the district's doing, or the district and the Corps, our big partner, are doing together. So just a lot of great projects. I'm just going to touch on a few. And, to go back to Beth's presentation and what Mr. Bartlett said, our section is heavily involved in any of the design, right from the beginning, intermediate design till the final. And, whether it's an STA, reservoir, whatever it is, we're there to ensure that there's things like parking and, boat ramps and shelters and all that type of stuff. So, that we, ensure these projects have access. So with that, I'll go ahead and start. And a great project that just opened up, was built in partnership with the Corps, is Nubbin Slough STA. It's located in Okeechobee County. Just before you get in town there, if you're heading north on the B line, it's a smaller STA compared to maybe some of the bigger ones down south, but the property is about 1,500 acres and the STA is about 150 acres. And just thank our board for approving that in February to designate it as an STA and open for public use. What was really great was the new parking area and public access ramps that are right adjacent to the road, to 710 and the B line. So you can pretty much jump off, and if you see that arrow there where the new parking area is, our engineers and construction folks When they were doing some minor repairs out there, they actually included these ramps that actually allow the public now to go right up onto the levee. And it also assists our maintenance staff. So that site is now open for hiking, biking, wildlife viewing, just like the other STAs, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday during daylight hours. And what I expect is a lot of people in town, particularly in the Okeechobee, coming over there to go biking and hiking around that levee. And I want to thank our field station staff. They just installed a bunch of our signage, so you know where to park, and put up our rule signs and help with the entrance there. So great site that just opened up. Okay, now I'm going to jump up north to the northern part of the district. This is the Shingle Creek Management Area, located in Orange County. About 2,400 acres, beautiful property. It's got wetlands and swamp adjacent to the creek, some Pine Island forest there. And this is really, this creek up there is really the headwaters of the Everglades. So it's an important part of district ownership there. And that's been open for quite a while, real popular in a fairly urban area. You know, got a lot of hiking and biking on the trails that are designated wildlife viewing, and you can also go canoeing and fishing in the creek. Just one of many projects we're working on. The site's very popular, and we're building a new picnic shelter there that's already been permitted by the county and probably be done in the next couple weeks. Okay, now I'm going to jump to way down south, so to a whole nother area down in Miami-Dade County. You know, the district and the Corps are doing so many different projects, and I just like to maybe highlight some different ones that maybe this group hasn't seen yet, just to give you the diversity. This is down in Biscayne Bay, coastal wetlands area. This is a new structure, the S703, that the Corps is building under contract. And the structure's, you know, got a great project to it. It's going to be able to put more water from the canal. This is the L31 and the C102 intersection there before it goes out to Biscayne Bay, and put some of that water back into that wetlands. What I want to talk about is just, you know, another example of recreation. Now you see those levees there and how beautiful that bottom picture is. Those levees are all interconnected to the county's Greenway Trail system for hiking and biking. You know, when you're down there, you just see tons of bikes riding along those levees. So as part of this project, there's going to be some shelters there with kiosks. There's also going to be 2 pads with picnic tables and stuff. So you not only can hike and bike there, you could possibly even take a canoe and kayak into that area. But you stand on, you know, just a few weeks ago, I went to the end of that levee where it meets the bay, and it's just an incredible area to see, incredible area, you know, to go fishing and so forth. So just an example of one of the projects that's underway, under construction. Okay, back to the A1 Flow FEB, which is located in Palm Beach County. James talked about it and got a few questions about it. What I wanted to just mention was, as you all know, the site's real popular. You know, it's approximately 16,000 acres. The northeast portion of the levee that you see up here, if I can get this cursor, this portion right here is the construction route over to the EA projects, you know, the Reservoir and Sta that'll be to the west of that. You know, another great projects that are coming forward that will all have recreation on it. So that levee's, you know, the construction staging area is up here. A lot of construction will be going through there for the next several years. So that portion of the levee will be closed for quite a while. But what I wanted to bring up is we've got a new structure going in. It's somewhere about here, the S635, and that's going to assist with holding water back as it's needed for these projects before it heads down to STA 34. So that's starting this month. It's not going to be a construction project as long as the other levee is closed, but this levee here on the southwestern side up to this point will be closed for a little over a year, from March now till approximately August 2023. Rest of the site's still open. Public access points, doesn't affect anything down in the southeast corner. And, this has turned out to be one of the best, or one of the better bass fishing areas in South Florida here, especially out there. So, and I know the South Levee is a really good place to fish. So all that'll still remain open. But I just wanted to make you all aware of that closure there on the South Levee, southwestern levee there. One other small closure for those of you that go out into the Rocky Glades or Frog Pond area. This is a popular area for biking, hiking, and wildlife viewing, but also for small game hunting. There's a levee that's in red here, just to the west of the structure S332B, and it's one of many levees that's open for public use, but it's a popular access point. That levee will be temporarily closed for approximately 2 years when they do some repairs to the levee and some of the discharge pipes, but there's still plenty of access all through that site and on the eastern and western sides of that area. Okay, jumping back up here, or in the Palm Beach, Martin County area, you're all probably familiar with the Loxahatchee River. Huge, popular area, probably one of the best places around here to go canoeing and kayaking. A lot of people start at Riverbend Park, just south of, down here, just south of Indiantown Road, and then canoe a portion of it or all the way up to Jonathan Dickinson. And we've got two great dams there, the Lanehart and the Maston Dam, that not only are dams that you can go over or view, but there's portages on adjacent to those for canoeing and kayaking. This is a quick project. It's a great project. We're going to replace the decking on both those dams where the portages are, and the contractor is going to work as best as they can to maintain public access around those portages, but they may temporarily be closed. This starts this month, and they'll be complete in mid-May 2022. So, only a couple month project. All right, we'll talk about just a couple of volunteer projects. It's been a while with things going on that we haven't, had some large projects as we did a few years ago, but we're working with some of the groups that have helped us in the past on the Kissimmee River. And we're going to have another project, a big project. This is going to be further north on the Kissimmee River, up just into Osceola County. It's actually on the line of Polk and Osceola County. This is an area called Blanket Bay, just south of State Road 60. And that's basically that yellow line is the district's property line between there and the river. And we've got a big project that we're scheduled, looking at Saturday, April 30th. FSCA, I think, is going to be one of the leaders of that, as they have in the past. And we'll have the volunteers will be up there removing some of the old cross fencing when there was, different cattle that were staged up there, and some of the debris, and also assist with the installing signage, public use signage delineating that line. So a big project I look forward to in the April 30th timeframe on Saturday. And if you all recall, we had a couple, but our last project was just incredible. We had 15 buggies and probably 50 to 60 people out there, families, kids, everything. So this is great to see us doing this again. And one last volunteer project I wanted to mention, just a good news story. If you all remember, it's probably a couple meetings ago. This is up in Shingle Creek again, up there in Orange County. The group, one of the presidents came for the SORBA, the Southern Off-Road Bike Association. Well, they're now engaged with us. They've got a volunteer agreement they've put together, and just recently they had 30 volunteers out there working on all the trails, repairing trails, and you just see by this picture, the group of people out there, all different ages, kids and so forth. So great to see. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Cook, or if there's any questions.
That was a great presentation, and I want to chime in on FSCA, and I know that's a huge event, and these guys do an awesome job, so I'm grateful to see you guys continue that. It's pretty exciting. My question was about Rocky Glades. Does that levee closure have any negative impacts on the python contractors and their ability to catch pythons?
No, not at all. No, they're still all engaged in that area. Yep. Good question, though.
Anyone else, any questions? Yes, there you go. Yes.
I had a question about the Nub and Slough area. Is any hunting opportunities being considered for that STA?
At this point, no. We actually went out there. Mr. Cook was out there. A few of the staff out there. When we looked at it a couple years ago, we did not see, the amount of, let's just go with waterfowl at that time. It's a small STA compared to some of the bigger STAs. But we'll continue to monitor it. I think, some of these smaller STAs like Nub and Slough, there's some other ones like Lakeside Ranch too. You know what I think, what they may work out really well for is some of these specialty hunts, the youth or wounded warrior, where you've got a smaller, STA, and you may not be sure, if it can fulfill a quota hunt, but we'll continue to keep a look at it, take a look at it.
How about things like snipe and dove?
Yeah, I don't know about snipe and dove, to be honest with you. I don't know if we've taken a close look at that. So that's something I'll write down. We'll definitely take a look.
I'll make a point on that. Jim and his predecessor and I have been out there looking at it for years, a long time. The SDA is going to be all cattails. It's not going to be much ducks out there. Sometimes you might get a call that the whistlers are there, and we might be able to do a pop-up hunt or something with some new software the FWC is working on for their permitting. This place has a spot for a dove field, like Dupree. It's there. It would be a good dove field because it's not a woods area. It's actually populated not too far away with Okeechobee. And I have put in a request with Jim to look at a possible dove field there. But FWC has to do dove field. So it's a multiple problem. But I can see someday there being a dove field there. And that has to go through a long process, but it's been asked for. And that's the point we're at now. Anything else? Anybody else? Any Zoom land people?
Yes, we do. We have John Monty.
Hey, Dan, John Monty again. I know we exchanged a few emails about that A1 Fed closures when it comes to the levees. And I think it was too early to know, but will we lose any kind of access in there when it comes to waterfowl permits or alligator permits?
No, John, I don't expect us to lose any. I just, with the construction going on, especially, kind of going back to your comment to James and on the quotas, I believe you were asking about the gator hunting. We probably we don't have any plans to decrease anything, but we probably at the same point with all that construction on the northwest corner are going to take place for the next couple of years. And then this year with that western levee at the southern end, we probably at the same time don't have the room to increase. But to answer your question directly, no, John, we don't have any plans to decrease anything.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
All right.
I have no additional hands raised.
Hey.
Okay. Yes, Bishop.
I don't know if this is the proper time to ask, but is there any plans for Mecca Farms or what's going on there?
For Mecca, is that what you said? Yes. Bishop, I
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Do you, Steve, or anyone here, as far as Mecca goes?
No, it's still being looked at for the project. And Drew, do you have any specifics on the Mecca project itself?
Right now, there's a lot of engagement with the county on what that's ultimately going to look like. Because as it was designed in the SERP project, it was a deeper reservoir, but the county was uncomfortable with that. So they're engaging us to figure out whether it can be shallower and we could put storage in other places. We've got to sort through that probably this year. And then we'll know kind of what the final thing looks like, and then we can start the design and think about recreation. I know that we're working with FWC on the, what is it called, on the north side, the gun range, on the north side, to try to open that up some more. I think we gave them some land to open that up to other activities. But with respect to the reservoir, that's kind of the status of it.
Well, that's what I was really getting at, because that's where the next dove field's going to be.
Yeah, so we've been working with them, and we donated land to them so they could get to work on it.
Okay, no one else on Zoom? Anyone else out there? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Chrissy Figueroa.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This is Chrissy Figueroa. Sorry, I'm out here in Zoom land. What we're brought to you guys is the Central Everglades Planning Project. I think the last time we kind of talked to you guys was more than a few years ago. So I'm Chrissy Figueroa. I'm the temporary program manager for Sep. The two pieces that I am the project manager for are Everglades Agricultural Area and Sep New Water. The two other project managers are Danette Goss for Sep North, and then Kyle Kier, who's going to be presenting some information on Sep South to you guys. So you have two of us here. Next slide, please. So this is the Sep overview. As you guys probably know, Sep has changed a little bit since 2014. We now have incorporated the EAA reservoir into that. So we're looking at approximately a $5 billion program on this one. And we're still tracking completion in fiscal year 2030. So that's great news. We're moving forward. But one of the reasons we're coming here to talk to you guys today is that means we're also going to start impacting some of the recreational areas as we move forward with construction. So the purpose of this presentation is to come to you guys, talk a little bit through Sep South, because that's the one that's moving forward right now, and then get some comments and potentially recommendations from you guys moving forward, most specifically for the S356 pump station. And the only thing I will caveat that on is that we are finished with intermediate design and moving into final design. So we have some room to talk through the recreational and access to recreational features for the pump station, but we would not be moving that location. That location was cited in the PIR, and that's where we're going to build it. If you, Kyle Kier will then continue through the presentation with Sep South, and I'll be on the line to answer any additional questions that you may guys have if he can't answer them for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kyle to walk you through Sep South as a whole, and then the S356 pump station.
Hey, Chrissy. Thanks for that overview of Sep and the introduction. Quick sound check just for my comfort, please. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Hey, I'm Kyle Kier, and as Chrissy had introduced, I'm the Senior Project Manager for Sep South Project Features. I'll be getting into and talking through Sep's recreation plan so that we can all be on the same page with respect to the timing and effects of project construction on recreation in that area. So within Sep, functionally, there are 10 recreation sites to be developed that were identified within the larger Sep project area, 5 associated with Sep EAA project features that we can certainly discuss at another time. And 5 of my interests that will be implemented specifically with the Sep South project. Those sites are sites F, G, H, and I. I'm going to ask you to forward to the next slide, if you would, please. Slide 3. There we go. Thank you. So right now, it's anticipated that sites F and I, in bold there in red font, will be constructed by the South Florida Water Management District. Though this isn't quite set in stone yet, but the Corps and South Florida Water Management District are working for the details to make this happen. So that leaves sites G, H, and J to be constructed by the Jacksonville District. And I'll be presenting the details of those recreation sites. But let's take a look at a better map. So if you would, let's go to the next image there. Yeah, perfect. So here's a layout of the recreation plan from the 2014 project implementation report. You'll see sites F and I up there in the northeast extent of the L67A levee. Up here, we expect to put in picnic tables, bike racks, a 12x6 shelter, kayak launch, a 32x40 group shelter, vault toilets, parking, boat ramp, and a courtesy dock, all on the south side of the L67A canal, right there identified as recreation site F. On the north side of the L67A canal for primitive camping, we'll be bringing in picnic tables, vault toilets, a courtesy dock, and a fire ring there at recreation site I, up in the top right-hand corner of that image. And I apologize for the resolution of this image. I really struggled to get a better PowerPoint through to the district, but it just wasn't capable of doing it for some reason. So at site G, down there in the lower left-hand corner to the southwest at the confluence of the L67A and L67C levees, we'll be installing a vehicle and pedestrian gate, some picnic tables, bike rack, a 12x6 shelter, kayak launch, vault toilets, additional parking, a boat ramp, and a fishing pier. This work is planned to be bundled with the construction efforts of Sep South Contract 6, which is expected to be awarded in 2025. Now I've got a graphic that we'll get to in a few slides down here that'll make it easier to visualize the schedule and timing. So stay tuned for that. At recreation site H, over there to the east, in the lower right-hand corner of that image, as part of Sep South Contract 2B, the demolition of the existing S356 pump station just west of where the L29 and L30 canals meet. The plan is to put in a vehicle pedestrian gate with some picnic tables, a bike rack, a 12x6 shelter, a kayak launch, and some additional parking to support the increased usage. These features will be bundled and constructed with Sep South Contract 2B in 2028. Now, I've skipped Sep South Contract 2A briefly. We'll get into that in some more detail on this contract and its associated recreation features a few more slides down, because that's the more prevalent one that I think that we want to present right now. So last but not least, there's recreation site J up there, right in the middle of that figure. At some point along what will be built as part of Sep South Contract 5, the Blue Shanty levee, also referred to as the L67D levee. We expect to build an airboat crossing to facilitate recreational egress between the east and west areas of WCA 3B. The Corps is scheduling this to be constructed as part of Sep South Contract 5 in 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so what's actually happening out there right now? Well, we have a few projects that have been completed by South Florida Water Management District, Contract 3A and Contract 14, the S333 North Gated Spillway, and the Old Tamiami Trail removal. So we have some immediate success in project execution right there. We're also working to complete a validation report to adopt and bring the decomp physical models S152 structure and its associated L67C backfill treatments, bring those into Sep South as a permanent feature to further facilitate the movement of water from WCA3A into WCA3B. With respect to ongoing work, we have Sep South Contract 1 that was awarded in 2020. This contract removed some of the spoil piles that were along the northwest side of the L67A canal and degraded a 3,000-foot length of the L67C levee that creates a gap to allow the movement of water from WCA3A into WCA3B. This contract is being closed out right now, and a new contract put in place to continue construction of the 3 6x6 gated box culvert structures along the length of the L67A levee. You can see them right there in the graphic as the white brackets labeled 631, 632, and 633. Can I get a sound check? I'm getting an error on my computer. I just want to make sure that I'm still being heard.
You know,
We hear you fine.
Okay, fine, thank you, because y'all disappeared on my screen. So if you look at the white brackets, it identifies the locations for the 3 6x6 gated culvert structures. And the contract will also provide for backfill of the east-west agricultural ditch as it runs between the L67A levee and the L67C levee. The ag ditch is unidentifiable at that resolution in this graphic, but it's the canal structure that's right there just north of the kink in the L67A levee where it bends and starts moving to the northeast. The ag ditch runs due east from there and meets the L67C levee. We're working on a series of possible fill treatments with the South Florida Water Management District Decomp Physical Model Science team and our engineering and our internal science team to kind of assess what the best fill pattern would be. The Contract 1 effort impacts the northern boat ramp at S333 North, limiting it to official government access, but leaves the southern boat ramp into the L67A canal open for public access. We'd expected continued closure of the northern boat ramp, but with the transition between contracts right now, I anticipate this access ramp will be opened or reopened for a limited time as we're working to get another contractor on site to complete the Contract 1 features. It actually might be open right now, as I know that the contractor that was out there is fully demobilized off-site. I can't see it, but if you could move to the next slide, slide 6, please, the construction photos. So here's some great aerial views of the construction work that's been completed as part of Contract 1. And the two photos on the far right, as well as the one in the middle of the bottom row there, you can see the work that was done to degrade the spoil piles along the northwest boundary of the L67A canal there. The photos themselves are a bit dated, but I think they're from August of last year. My apologies, I couldn't find new ones to get on there, but really the only difference that would be is that what's seen as work in progress in the photos there is now work that's been completed. And right there at the bottom row, far left, you'll see work that's been done to begin construction of the cofferdam at the S633 gated culvert. This work will be picked up with the next contract, and so will the work to begin construction of the S632 and S633 structures. They'll be very similar. Next slide, please. Okay, so now that we've talked through what's been done and what's ongoing, what other projects are in queue and what impacts might this work have on recreation and public access? Well, of immediate interest would be the work for Contract 2A and Contract 3B. These are both to be awarded in FY23. Those are the S356 East Pump Station and the S355 West Gated Spillway. With the last one there, Contract 3B, we do not expect the need for any recreation limitations or access issues with respect to the boat ramps. With Contract 2A, though, there will be impacts, one permanent and the rest temporary. If we could go to the last slide, slide 9, I think that'll better facilitate a visual for what I'm going to speak to right here. So there will be a permanent loss of the eastern boat ramp right there at the confluence of the L29 and L30 levees. This boat ramp will be covered and the area backfilled as the Contract 2B project footprint will overlay this area. Excuse me, 2A and 2B. So because this is an unofficial boat ramp in that it's not an agency's inventory or owned by a public or private entity, the government does not have the authority to expend funds to replace or compensate for its loss. That's the permanent loss. The existing boat ramp immediately north of the side entrance off of the Tamiami Trail, that will remain open with no use restrictions. That being said, there will, though, be impacts to access of that ramp due to the increased traffic in that area with residential, public, and commercial access as it is today, coupled with the construction traffic crossing over the S334 bridge structure. With the loss of the eastern ramp and increased traffic across the S334 spillway, crossing the L29 canal right there, one of the major requirements our agencies will be placing on the contractor is to develop a robust traffic control plan that will identify parking areas, traffic circulation patterns, and the need for flaggers, etc. Maybe some signage and lights, whatever is needed. The intention of that traffic plan is to minimize any impacts as much as possible so that we can get folks in there to launch their boats, so we can get some of the recreational interests out there at the same time as allowing ingress and egress for the construction traffic. We're also coordinating with South Florida Water Management District to access any ability we might have to put lighter construction traffic across the S355 crossing that's just around the corner over the L30 canal that's just off of Chrome Avenue there. Once construction is off site, access and use of that boat ramp will return to normal. And then further down the line with contracts 5 and 6 to be awarded in FY24 and FY25, I expect we'll see impacts similar to those that we have out of contract 1 right now. Access limitations to the northern boat ramp at the S333 North and southern boat ramp at S33 North. So if you can back up one slide, that's my schedule. And if you look at the schedule, it kind of identifies the timing and sequencing for when these projects are going to come in line. The blue line's construction, so you can see that we expect to be out constructing contract 1 until FY24. I will mention, however, that with the reprocurement that we're working through with contract 1 right now, that that timeline could shift a few quarters, maybe a year or so out to the right, all depending on what we're able to get from that contractor. But you can see next in line at FY23, contract 2. Further down the line, contract 3B both start in FY23. Contract 5, construction begins in FY24, and then contract 6, right there with construction starting in FY25. That's about all I had for Sep South. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, and I'll lean into Chrissy and see if there's anything else I might have missed that she wants to fill.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think you did a great.
All right, go ahead, man.
Thank you, Chrissy. I'm open for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? I just want a heads up. I want to know what recreation access is being lost. And if this is a part of the decomp and where the levee debris is going to go on the L67. And is this the first step in decomp, or is this just a standalone situation?
No, sir. So can we go back to my slides? I'm sorry. Go to the very last slide, if you would, please. So right here is a layout of the project footprint for contract 2, the S356 East Pump Station. And that horizontal line down there on the bottom running east to west is the Tamiami Trail. You'll see I have the existing S334 crossing labeled in blue there in the lower left-hand corner. If you were to drive into that that entrance area, cross over the L29 canal, and then turn right past the existing S356 pump station and keep going right all the way down to the end where the L29 and the L30 canal is right there. There's an unofficial boat ramp that as I understand it, has been put in there by users. Folks just found a great area to launch. And they started using it. It turned out to be a really great place to launch with all the open space for parking and whatnot. So you can see that that area is right over the project footprint. And so that's the boat ramp that will be lost, sir.
Levee debris.
I have one hand raised, Baron Moody.
So sorry, I misunderstood what I read on the website and I didn't join y'all in person tonight. I had a couple questions about things that were on the slides. Site G was referencing a ramp being put in. As I looked at that, there's already a ramp there. So I don't understand why we're talking about putting a boat ramp where there's already a ramp. Site F, I think, is about where the 150 or the 151 is. How are we getting vehicles there to make use of a boat ramp? And then there's a reference to north and south ramps at the S333 north. Are you referring to the ramp into L67C as north and the ramp into L67A as south? Because I mean, there's
yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. Because for a lot of years, decomp has presented some real challenges to recreation in the L67C canal. And so what you're describing, in my opinion, is a continuation of that. And I think that's what Newton's asking about when he's asking where the spoil material is going. And certainly creating the blue shanty levee, it's the L67D, is gonna cut right through the L67C canal. And so this is a place where I think there are obvious impacts that certainly bass fishermen and other recreational fishermen that know the area, particularly, the L67C gets some use from Dade County anglers because they can, it's not as convenient to Broward County. So L67A and the great access at Holiday Park picks up a lot of use. And so the L67C was kind of a refuge sometimes for people from Broward that were willing to make the trip, or Dade County anglers. And so just because we don't have as large a use number, documented for that site, I don't think we should lose sight of the value it has to different groups of anglers. Thank you.
Roger that. Let me see if I can remember the questions. There were several questions in there. So sites I and F, access to sites I and F would be, taking that 21-mile drive up the L67A canal, or even over the L67C canal. Access could be gotten via airboat, or as I understand it, folks could actually come in from the north if they actually wanted to. That's access to I and F. For the boat ramps, the north and southern boat ramps, we did what we could to keep them as open as long as possible. The boat ramp to the north, we don't expect to close it permanently. It's just going to be temporarily closed during construction. It's going to be right in the middle of construction. There's going to be a lot of construction traffic going through there, so we've limited it to agency use. If the Fish and Wildlife Commission needs to get out there, or South Florida, or any agency needs to get out there with 24-hour notice, we can accommodate that access. The boat ramp that's down to the south there that goes into the L67A canal, we've left that open for access for the public to get into. As far as the recreational features that were planned, I'm just going to say that they were worked out years ago when the project implementation report was put together. I expect that there were some people that knew the area well and felt that these particular areas could use an enhanced boat ramp or some other feature. So there might be some features out there that aren't needed anymore, and we'll certainly have a look at those when we get down to some of the details and the designs for these recreational areas. Over.
Next, Dr. Reinhardt.
Have another Zoom person?
Yes, Dr. Reinhardt, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Hear you.
Yes, thank you. Tom Reinert, Regional Director for FWC. I appreciate the presentation. We've had a lot of concerns with recreational access on these projects in the past, and they continue moving forward. I'll start with the 333 area. I just want to confirm that the boat ramp is going to be returned to the boat ramp that has been removed from public access will be returned to public access, at least in the interim phase in between contracts. I appreciate that. And if you can confirm that, please. And then there was a airboat ramp or launch site there into 3B, and that was removed. Will that be retained? And then I have a further question about the other end.
I will confirm that the S333 North boat ramp will be returned to public use as much as possible. If we've got construction traffic running around, then it's a little hard, and for safety, it's just better that we don't let the two cross. But now that our first execution and procurement for contract one is demobilized off-site, that area is going to reopen right now. So folks can get out there and use it as they please, at least until we get the second contract awarded. And then with respect to the launch site into 3 Bravo, I am unaware of that launch site. So unable to speak to it. My apologies.
Okay. Next question is moving down to the 356, talking about the unofficial boat ramp that's going away, and then limiting access to the constructed boat ramp. I believe earlier our discussions included adding a boat ramp just to the west to make up for the congestion at one and the loss of the other, and that appears to be off the table now. I'm just very concerned about how you're going to handle all construction traffic, limited use of the ramp, and the amount of use that goes there.
Yes, sir. That's a great question, and I appreciate you bringing it up. That's exactly why we're here today. So the secondary boat ramp that you're referring to was a concept that we were coming up to try and mitigate for access impacts to the existing boat ramp that's there, the FWC boat ramp, as I hear it referred to, that's right above the entrance there over the S334 bridge crossing. It was never meant to mitigate for or replace the boat ramp that was over there to the east. We are not allowed to compensate for that boat ramp just because it's quote unquote unofficial, for lack of a better term. If it were part of an agency's inventory, or if it were owned by somebody and it were, due for maintenance and whatnot, then, we'd probably have to look at it. But it's my understanding, as I've been working through this, that that's really an unofficial boat ramp that the users, the local area users have put in there and continue to use. The secondary boat ramp that was proposed to be placed about 100 to 200 feet to the west of the existing boat ramp. The more we talked about it, the more we debated it internally, the more we just kind of identified that it was a cost that wasn't necessary, that we could mitigate for traffic impacts, probably just as good as we would be able to if we were to build a secondary boat ramp. That for that boat ramp to have any effect, it would probably have to be moved significantly farther to the west, and then we get into other issues about whether or not it's actually still part of the project area and other permitting needs that we might need to make that boat ramp happen. So right now we haven't closed the table on it. We're kind of discussing it internally, and that's part of the reason why we're here today. But we feel as an agency that we can mitigate for construction and traffic impacts with a fairly robust and dedicated traffic plan to make sure that folks can get in there and out of there and aren't crossing traffic with the construction.
Okay.
Over.
Well.
Hey, this is Chrissy. And real quick, one of the things that we know is the biggest issue is the single access point coming into this site. And so that's kind of why we're turning to you guys. What's the best way to help mitigate access to that boat ramp? Is there a traffic pattern? Is there additional parking? Is there turnarounds? Are there ways that we haven't identified that may help others access that ramp? I do want to say this isn't the last opportunity to talk about this. We wanted to come here early to have this conversation. We are looking for a Sep public meeting in the May timeframe, and we will publicly notice that and let you know that the S356 pump station will be on that. And we're happy to come back and talk to you guys at any point in time to walk through this in more detail. We recognize the issue, and we just want to make sure that we can work with you guys.
Thank you very much. Mike, first.
Thank you for that presentation, and thank you to Tom for jumping in and recognizing the concern that has been raised. And as you both said in your presentations, you're here today to get answers to these questions. And the answer to your question is already in front of you, but you've negated the answer by saying that you have no obligation because the boat ramp was not official to mitigate for that. But The boat ramp was for public access to public lands for what's going to be a project paid for with public dollars. And you're creating a situation for disaster by leaving the only access point being directly in the line of the structure that is the only means of egress and ingress into the area. I understand that you don't have an obligation because the ramp is not official to mitigate for it, but that's the solution to your problem, is to mitigate for that ramp. You are about to take away what is the only access to the southern portion of 3B and create I think the governor calls it a Charlie Foxtrot, by leaving the only access point right there at that structure. So I understand that you don't have an obligation, but this is public land for the public and a public project with public tax dollars. You should be looking for ways to mitigate that access, even if it means going a little further to the west, whether you are required to or not. It literally means 2 or 3 loads of dirt and fill to create a flat area where people can offload their airboats and park their trucks. It's that simple.
I do want to clarify one thing. It's not that there's no, it's not that we don't want to, it's that we don't actually have the authority to mitigate for a non-permitted access to the thing. So we do want to discuss that, but we don't have the authority to do so under the federal project.
You have the regional director from FWC confirming that this is going to create a problem. So you have, and I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to where the Corps says they love working hand in hand with all of their state partners. So between the district and the commission who's paying attention, you should be able to find a workaround for this instead of just throwing your hands up and saying we don't have the authority to do it.
The question I always have when I hear that is, who does have the authority? And we'll get it for you. I mean, you're taking away access to a large area. And this is why I mentioned early on, if you don't get this stuff in 20 years before the friggin' project starts, guess what? You bump into stuff like this. There's absolutely no excuse for this boat ramp being removed at this time, just as the project is starting. Bishop, would you like to answer your question, please?
I would just like to say it's an airboat ramp. And airboaters have never requested $1 million ramp. All we ever requested was a place that we could access the area. And we continue because we never requested to have a big fancy concrete ramp with a big fancy parking lot. You know, it's like a conservation area too. We were promised that ramp. Thank God it never happened, but that's probably the most busiest airboat ramp in South Florida. And it ain't nothing but a little bit of shell rock. And thank you, the districts, about 5 years ago, adding that shell rock to that, so we don't have to wade to the airboat anymore. But again, this is a valuable boat ramp. Only people that access that area are airboaters. And I promise you, y'all need to start working and looking at it, because when you do your public scoping, you're going to hear about it again from a lot of people that use it, enjoy it, and live to it.
I just would like to know the date of the public meeting before this thing gets put to bed.
I just want to note that all of those scoping meetings were held during the planning phase, which was during the PIR for SEP in the 2012 to 2014 timeframe. We've moved forward to design with an authorized project. We'd be happy to come and talk to you guys, but at this point, we're not in the scoping process of this project.
So I didn't even know about this issue till I showed up at this meeting, which is why I show up to this meeting. But I hear you. We're going to try to figure this out.
Thank you, Drew. I would really want to see this get an opportunity for the public to make a comment on it, because obviously if this had happened early on, this would never got to this point, because you would have heard from a lot of the public. Okay, do we have anybody on Zoom?
No, sir.
Okay. Anyone else here? We do need to cut this off by 6 in order, by 7. I'm looking at that clock. Thank y'all very much. We appreciate it. Sorry for the making you go back to work a little bit, but this situation needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, FWC rule change update on South Florida Water Management District areas. And Brad Fontaine, public hunting area biologist, and welcome, Brad.
Thank you, Newton. Yeah, so I've been in this position for just about 4 or 5 months now, so I haven't got to meet a lot of you guys yet, but I'm looking forward to meeting everybody and working with you. I just have a quick update on the new rules and opportunities that were passed at the last commission meeting a couple weeks ago. And this is going to be as they pertain to district lands. So if you have questions on any of the other properties we have in the South region, I have my email address here for any other questions. Good. Okay. So starting out, we have Alpata Flats. There's going to be a 2-day spring turkey hunt in the last Saturday of February, and it's going to be 10 permits for the hunt. Like I said, these are pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to breeze through them. Again, if we have questions, hopefully we have time for that. So at Everglades, Holy Land, and Rotenberger, the 2 rule changes are that we are allowing wild hog to be dismembered before being checked at the check station, and allowing any dog to be used for hunting waterfowl or snipe during their respective statewide seasons. At Crew, adding to the list of small game legal to take during small game is going to be wild hog. And we've also cleaned up a little bit of the rule language regarding dogs during general gun season. So they may be used for gray squirrel, migratory birds, quail, and rabbits. At Tepee, we have you can now hunt migratory birds during their respective statewide season, so doesn't have to be during an open season on the property, as long as it's during the statewide season. And then also bird dogs and retrievers can be used to hunt migratory birds. At Hungryland, we've just cleaned up our rule language a little bit to align it with the Water Management District rules to prohibit side-by-sides out there. And just clarifying that equestrian trailers are the only ones, the only types of trailers that are going to be allowed at Gate 8, which is the William H. Lee unit. And Southern Glades, we have vessel rules for the canal. So essentially, all vessels except for airboats may be used in the canals. And also, again, the dog language, bird dogs and retrievers may be used to hunt ducks, geese, coot, snipe, during their respective statewide seasons. And that is it for the South region rules on the district properties. A couple of the statewide rules that I wanted to highlight are, a few years back, we switched to this harvest reporting system for deer, and we're going to require the same thing for wild turkeys. So essentially, every turkey harvested should be reported on the app or on the phone system within 24 hours of harvest. And, down here, we're going to be allowing the take of non-protected birds. So in this area, Egyptian geese is kind of one of the big ones. The collared doves, and that'll be during the established seasons using methods of take as allowed by the season. And that's the bulk of our rule changes for this specific area. It's probably worth noting the alligator hunting rule package is different from the rule package that my group provides, but at the last commission meeting, it was conditionally approved to allow alligator hunting 24 hours a day, and also using an airbow or a PCP air gun with a bolt, arrow, and a tether. So as a legal method of take. And they wanted me to update on the Sawgrass Recreation Park. I don't have a lot of updates. So a little bit of background is that we've received complaints about the private gate blocking access to the public ramp. So our boating and waterways section and a lot of our staff are working with DEP and all the other partners, the district, looking at the land use lease with Sawgrass Recreation Park. As the lease states, there's nothing that says that they can't secure their area. There also isn't anything that says that they can. So we're going to be looking at kind of amending that lease and moving forward, trying to get everyone access to that boat ramp. So that only took 5 minutes, and I guess that means there's time for questions. And like I said, if there's questions that are about other properties in the South region or any questions in general, I got my email address up here, so you can feel free to email me. But yeah, I can take some questions now as long as we have time. So, yeah, Mike.
I just want to make sure that clarify there's two ramps at the Sawgrass. There's one in the south, the B,
Right.
and one in the A into B.
It's into B, the one that was being blocked by the gate. The concessionaire there, Sawgrass Recreation Park, they had some vandalism to some of their equipment, and so they locked the gate unannounced, I guess. And so, during the hunting season, people were trying to get in there and found out that they couldn't. So in the past, I think they had dummy locked it, and people had kind of come in, closed it behind them, and then dummy locked it again. I'm hoping we can get something like that worked out, but we got to get our lease agreement up to date, and so that we're serving the public.
And thanks for working on that.
Yeah, no problem.
We appreciate it, because that ramp is important to duck hunters. It's the only access point at the whole end of the place.
There's an access point to it, the sub canal, but that's the safest. We would rather park there than the sub canal for the same reason.
Right.
I park off of 27 there fishing just the other day, and those ramps are very interesting ramps. A lot of exciting things happen there. I was fishing there with my son one time, and it's the one on 27 on the west side there. And we went in the dark. We took off up fishing, and we come back to Sheriff was there. Oh, lots of sheriffs was there. And my son looked at me and said, "Dad, I think that woman was dead." And I said, "What woman?" He says, "Well, there was a lady laying over there next to a Pepsi can next to that Jeep over there when we put the boat in the water." And I said, "Oh, really?" Well, guess what? She was dead. I mean, that's one reason I'm sure that people lock the friggin' gate, but it does cut off access to all the duck hunters. So I appreciate you guys working on it, and we appreciate the landowners. They have to be considered in this as well. That's what I'm saying. Okay, anyone else? Mike?
Brad, you're the new Justin.
Yes, new Justin.
Welcome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mike.
You mentioned the exotics on there, and a while back ago, there was a question about purple swamp hens and the ability to hunt them. Is that going to be included? Has that been resolved? Do you know?
That's not in this rule package, so there's a federal protection order for them. I'm sure you know the history, but they're native to a U.S. territory. And so federally, we're not allowed to allow them for harvest. So our waterfowl biologist, Andrew Fanning, has been working on that a lot, and I think he's continuing to work on it. And we all see it in a lot of these properties that they're getting pretty thick, and hopefully we can get at them soon.
Anyone else? You have one on Zoom?
Sir?
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of quick cleanup. Oh, all right. Go ahead, sir.
Just a question regarding Dupuis and the waterfowl seasons. Now, you would still be required to have a quota if the quota is open, correct?
That's right. So if there's a quota hunt going on, you'd have to have a quota permit to be able to hunt anything in there.
But the days in between a quota.
That's right. You'd be able to hunt waterfowl during the season, as long as it's not a quota hunt. And even if it is a quota hunt and you do have a permit, you're allowed to hunt waterfowl in there, but most people don't.
I want to make that very clear. On Dupree, and thank you very much for getting it for full migratory bird season, because that means snipe and dove. Waterfowlers, I'll put a plug in, 10 years ago listed about 20 WMAs asking for full migratory bird seasons, and about 8 of them got it, which added about 100 days of hunting on some of those WMAs, because snipe is open into February. So we appreciate any time we see that. But I want to make it very clear, or at least you tell us very clear, if there is a quota deer hunt going on, can people just go in and migratory bird hunt?
Not without a permit.
Not without a permit. That's what I wanted to be absolutely sure, because we don't want to get people in trouble out there.
Right.
And that's the way it is on all the others. During quota hunts, you have to have a permit in order to hunt whatever on the item.
And this information will all be updated in the brochures for each particular property.
And there's no complaint about that, because a guy's waited 5 years to get a deer permit. You know, don't need a guy roaring around a duck boat right next to him. Now, the other question I have, allow take of non-protected birds such as collared doves and Egyptian geese during established area seasons. During established area seasons. What seasons for what? Egyptian geese and collared doves, scovies.
It could be a season for anything. It could be small game season. It could be deer season. Again, you're going to have to have a permit to be in certain areas, but you're going to be allowed to harvest Egyptian geese, collared doves during a season.
Okay, the reason I say that is in June, you can go down a canal, and if there's an Egyptian geese out there, which is not a native, it's a non-native species, you can kill that goose.
In June, if it's not during one of our seasons in one of our hunting areas, then you will not be allowed to do that. It's got to be.
So what you're saying is what's been practiced now. I was at the meeting. I don't remember this happening. I was there. Egyptian geese and Muscovy ducks, and right now iguanas are being whacked every day of the year, 24/7, 365 in South Florida. I know, because my son has about 20 Egyptian geese that roost in the lake behind his house.
Yes, that's allowed on private property.
No, it's county property, county lake. I really think we need to look at that, because I saw the rules at the FWC meeting, and I didn't see anything about you can only shoot an Egyptian geese or kill an Egyptian geese during waterfowl season. I didn't see anything like that.
Not that's just waterfowl season. It's all seasons.
This is not the place to argue this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, we can talk about it.
I'm going to have a conversation with the director of hunting, the FWC, because these exotic species have been open to people to take them 24/7, 365, as long as you do it humanely. That's the only FWC rule, is you have to dispatch them humanely. That's kind of like the python. You can hunt pythons 24/7, 365. So there's something amiss here that we'll have to discuss at another time.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? We have a Zoom?
Yes, sir. I have Dr. Reinhardt first.
All right.
Tom, you're on.
There we go. I had to wait for the unmute thing to come up. Newton, those are rules specific to our WMAs. So that's the caveat, because we don't allow hunting 365 in WMAs. So I think that's the confusion. Does that help?
I agree with you 100%. It just didn't say only WMAs. It said statewide rules change highlights.
Yeah, for our managed areas.
I apologize for the misunderstanding, but there's a lot of people watching this out there on Zoom land, and I want to be sure they understand the rule. And the rule is that if it's not on the WMA, then you can hunt exotic species such as Muscovy ducks, pythons, and Egyptian geese 24/7, 365, as long as you dispatch them humanely. Correct?
And abide by whatever firearm rules are on the property, or you have property permission to be on the property, and you're abide by whatever local rules there are. Yeah, absolutely. Take them all out.
Okay, I understand. A lot of air rifle business is really big in South Florida right now. Thank you
It
very
is
much
huge.
for coming on and responding. I do appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Clearing that up, Tom.
Okay, no further Zoom, no further questions?
Yes, sir, we have John Monty.
Hey, Brad, John Monty. I know I talked to Tom about this in length when it comes to the closure at Sawgrass Recreation. It seems like everybody's missing the big picture. Everybody has the main boat ramp there in Conservation Area 2A in mind when it comes to the closure. There's many ways to access Area 2A. There's probably 4 or 5 other ramps that can be accessed. But the important issue is entering Conservation Area 2B. Once you go through that gate and make a right between the power lines, that's the only ramp that allows us access into that whole conservation area.
Right.
It seems like that's fallen by the wayside. I just want to make sure that's an important point that it's got to be disputed.
Yeah, no, our staff is definitely aware of that's the only access point. And so, like I said, we're trying to work on that lease and get it buttoned up so that everyone can get in there when they need to.
Thanks, Brad.
Yes.
Next is Dr. Reinhardt.
Just wanted to respond to John Monty. I mean, the gate blocks access to both of those ramps. The airboat ramp is not an official ramp. It's not in the boat ramp finder. It's not constructed. So the reason we're focusing on the other one is because it was constructed with state funds and maybe federal funds. And my goal is to make sure that if we gain access to that one, we get access to both. So that's just the reason that we seem to be focusing on the one into 2A. Because if we figure out that gate and it not being locked or certain hours that it must remain open, then you're going to get access to both of them. And that's our goal. And how we get there, I'm not sure yet because of the MOU that we had with DEP and the lease agreements don't specifically mention that. And we got to figure that out. Ideally, I think that ramp is listed as sunrise to sunset. Obviously, that's not happening now if they're closing at 5 p.m. and opening at 8 a.m. If I could at least get it to that, I'd consider that a victory, but we'll see.
Thanks for coming back. I appreciate it very much, Bishop.
I hate to drag this on, but Tom, maybe we need to work on these official boat ramps that have been here for 100 years that are just a place you back into the water. Maybe we need to look at putting one of your fancy signs on there declaring it an FWC ramp before we lose them all.
Thank you, Bishop. Anyone else? Anyone else in Zoom?
Yes, Mr. Monty.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of duplicate what Bishop said. It's just what I would call a primitive ramp, but something needs to be done to put that on the map, because if we're not allowed to access that ramp, there's no access to that entire area. Or maybe FWC needs to look into building a ramp somewhere else to allow access into that area, because other than that ramp, there's nothing, which means no alligator hunting at night, no frogging, no duck hunting, just something to look at.
Thank you, John. I think the point has been made. Brad, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We look forward to having you back again.
All right. Sounds
No,
good.
seriously, Brad's doing a wonderful job, and Jim, but anyway, thank you very much. And now, Mike Evanbaum, Conservation Chair of the Cypress Chapter of the Isaac Walton League.
Help you. Let's see. I think somebody deleted your folder. Yeah, it was right here.
I push a button when I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it just
click on it.
just
The
a
arrow.
slide.
All right.
The arrow.
Thanks, Yvette. Good evening, everybody. Mike Elfenbein. I am the Conservation Chair of the Cypress Chapter of the Isaac Walton League, also the Chief Cook and Bottle Washer. Topics for tonight: who is Ikes? Why is access critical? And how can we make it happen? I should have started with the title: Wild South Florida Access as a Conservation Tool. Isaac Walton League, also known as the Ikes, is celebrating its 100-year anniversary this year. Many people ask me who Isaac Walton is, and I had to learn that. And Isaac Walton lived from 1593 to 1683, and he remains famous for writing the book, The Complete Angler, one of the most important environmental books in history. Isaac Walton teaches the reader about fish and fishing while also imparting a view of the natural world that was revolutionary at the time. Throughout the book, Walton shares knowledge in natural history and ecology, advocates for methods of wildlife management and sustainable fishing that are fundamental to modern science-based resource management. The Ikes, or Isaac Walton League's, mission is to conserve, restore, and promote the sustainable use and enjoyment of our natural resources, including soil, air, woods, waters, and wildlife. Our local chapter, the Cypress chapter of the Isaac Walton League, was formed 50 years ago by Charles Garrett, and it was established as a result of the fight in the Big Cypress to stop the development of Jetport and the ensuing subdivisions that would have followed. The local chapter was also instrumental in getting the Big Cypress declared as an area of critical state concern, which came ahead of the preserve's creation in 1974, and was also involved in getting Barefoot Beach acquired, which later became Delnor Wiggins State Park, and also was a huge proponent for the creation of the Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park. As we all know and have been privy to, finding a balance between the needs of the natural world and developed society have butted heads many times. We've seen that here today, just with the topics we've covered. I don't need to explain to you the slide here as to how we got to draining the Everglades, but wanted you all to have that picture in your mind as we went forward. Land acquisition is an ongoing battle in this state. The battle between farmers and ranchers to keep their land in production, the needs of development, residential development, and water, not just for people, but for agriculture. And then more importantly, what are the needs of wildlife? And if you look at this map here in front of you, you can see clearly what development is doing to our natural world and the need to have to put more of these pieces of land into big green blocks instead of watching them turn into big red blocks. Do we need more land? Yes, we do. Getting more land isn't enough on its own. Frequently, we see the agencies like the Water Management District and FWC charged with acquiring more land, but what we don't see is the allocation of funding to allow these agencies to properly manage those lands moving forward. And that's clearly evident with the non-native species of plants and animals that are overwhelming many of our natural areas. Advocacy and access. How can inviting a bunch of city slickers into our wilderness help with the long-term conservation? Many of you grew up fishing and hunting from before you could remember being out of diapers. For a lot of people, those opportunities aren't there. So creating those opportunities helps, as we know, create those connections between the unimmersed people living in the city and what our natural world needs. What access is hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, bird watching, and more. This picture was taken last week at the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. and was the second ever turkey harvested from the Panther Refuge in the 33 years since it was created. These types of efforts are probably the most important. One that I'd like to take a jab at here while we're sitting with the district is the discussion of purchasing some lands in Collier County by the South Florida Water Management District, adjacent to Big Cypress and the Fakahatchee, and working with the district to identify and work towards implementing those recreational opportunities. What access isn't? Aquarium access. Aquarium access is essentially what happens when we buy lands, we put a big giant fence around it, and you can look at it as you drive by, but you can't really touch it. And that's not conducive to conservation. What access isn't: unregulated harvest, personalized habitat modification, growth development and private development, farming, housing, water storage, etc. Keys to future conservation: passion must be experienced. There is no greater way to connect someone to our natural world than to put them in it. Let them touch it, feel it, smell it. In my experience over the years, even not just with children, but even with adults, even with agency staff, agency leadership, elected officials, I have found that it's one thing for them to sit and discuss these issues in a room, but it's another to actually be there and see it and understand it. And I guess you could draw some similarities between the SEP presentation we heard from the Corps earlier today. Is it's one thing to look at that on a map and say that we're going to do this, this, and this, but when you're actually standing there and see what that looks like, it's probably a little bit different. Can't be lifelong if not introduced to kids. And who will be the next generation of you? I know a lot of people in this room. Many of them I seek to be like one day when I grow up, have done great things for bringing youth into hunting. I know Bishop and FSCA work really, really hard at that. Another organization, Future of Hunting in Florida, which I'm a part of, has worked hard towards that. And I challenge you all, you don't have to be in an organization or a part of something to take the neighbor's kid out or your kid's friends out who've never experienced these opportunities, and let them do that. Make it happen. How can we do that? Classroom curriculums, introducing this to the school systems, standardized text, and supporting field trips. I know SCI and Sean Batol have been doing some incredible things in increasing field trips to the Everglades for children in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. We can be more creative. Christmas bird counts. That's one thing that the Isaac Walton League participates in with the Audubon. Cleanup days, we heard about that today. Hands-on planting things like food plots, or planting mangroves, or improving habitat. Summer camps, data hunts, and fishing events. That's it. Thank you guys very much for the opportunity. Any questions?
Any questions, guys? I want to thank Mike for coming. We try to have what we call the stakeholder presentation at each of these meetings, and I can't think of a better stakeholder than Isaac Walton League. Probably goes back, like he said, to the 1600s. So when the gentleman wrote probably the first and only book of its kind in those days, and it's very much appreciated. Anybody on Zoom?
Yes, sir. I have Daniel Watson.
Good evening, everybody. I didn't have any questions. I think that was a great presentation. I just had a comment. I appreciate Mike's presentation, and it was very well put together. I think everyone in the room can agree that the largest problem with the Everglades right now is something we can't control. That's 300,000 people a year moving to Florida, and overdevelopment is tied to water management, seawater intrusion, invasive species. It's all comes back to these wild lands that get fenced off and the public loses access to them because it hurts the environment. We get kicked out, and then years later you're driving by and it's a Walmart parking lot. Every time we get fenced off and pulled out of some of these spots that we recreate, you can pretty much bet that it's going to end up being an apartment building or some kind of a strip mall. And then the ranch lands are very important because when you take a large acreage like that soaks up rainwater and pave over it, now we have to redirect that water. It's not going into the ground. It's going into pipes and infrastructure that we got to worry about, and eventually to probably ocean outfall. So I appreciate the work you're doing, Mike, and keep it up.
Dr. Reinhardt?
Great presentation, Mike. I didn't know you had it in you. Well done. I'll take your last slide. I appreciate the last slide and just use it as an opportunity to plug FWC's youth camps. We've got 2 overnight camps, the Everglades Youth Camp in West Palm, and we also have the Ocala Center. So if you got kids, that's a great thing for the summertime for a week-long camp for the kids. And we have our brand new Suncoast Center. It doesn't have overnight, but it does have summer camp in Apollo Beach, and then places further north. But thanks, Mike. Great presentation. And I agree with you 100%. Getting kids out in nature is step one.
Thanks, Tom. I enjoy working with you.
Anyone else on Zoom? Okay.
Additional hands raised.
Any other questions from Mike or comments, Bishop?
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for everything you do.
Thanks, Bishop. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Drew and staff here. Thanks for working with me. I know I didn't get you my presentation quite as fast as you expected, but I hope it was well worth the wait. I really appreciate the opportunity, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Okay, we're doing quite well on time, so we do have time tonight for a few minutes. If anyone has any further comments, any other further questions, any announcements that you'd like to make about forthcoming events, or if you belong to a group, what the group might be doing, and also if you have a suggestion for a topic for the next meeting. So basically, I just start to the left, and when I finish, we will go to Zoom. We will go to Zoom after we go around the circle here. So left to right, any comments? Yes, Bishop?
I would just like to thank James for, I know we've been putting you through a lot here lately with all these youth hunts, keeping you busy, and we really appreciate your effort and stepping into Jerry's shoes. Those are some big shoes to fill, and I think you're feeling them every day about now. And but thank you, and thanks to the district for giving us the opportunity. And I'm sure these other boys will talk about some hunts we've had lately. We've had some really terrific opportunities on the district land, and we really are glad to do that, and looking forward to the April 30th event, and really, really glad to be able to get back to doing some of the things we used to do. So fortunate on that. And a future topic, and this is something I think staff needs to reach out to the St. John's Water Management District. They have already been through all of this, and I'm afraid it's approached South Florida. But the airboat tour business is a big business, and a lot of small businesses take the opportunity to use public ramps to run their business out of. And Conservation Area 2 is starting to have some conflicts and starting to have some issues. And I hate to say this, and I hate to be the one to bring this down, because a lot of those people running businesses are my friends too, but I see the everyday airboater being affected, especially in off of Locks Road boat ramp mostly. I think we've had some issues in the past over at the Stub Canal and different things, especially when the water goes high or low and the area gets closed and everybody gets all in one ramp. But there's like to talk on the record about some of the issues, off the record about some of the issues, and maybe we can nip this in the butt before it gets as bad. But I know they had several of these issues at St. John's, and I know they got it figured out how to solve the problem. So instead of us trying to reinvent the problem solver, I think all we got to do is look at some things they did. But it's time we get to that point.
Thank you, Bishop. Any ideas for new or comments?
I'd like to hear more about what I mentioned when I was speaking about the district's acquisition of those lands in Collier and what the plans are for them and what we can do with them. I don't know what that's going to look like.
So the appropriation just landed on Friday, so not a whole lot of plans have happened over the weekend. Have had conversations with Secretary of DEP because those lands are proximal to Fakahatchee State Park, but not proximal to any other district lands. And so the conversation is, look, okay, we got the appropriation to go acquire, but can we just make it part of the park so the management of the land is done by that entity that is proximal to it? And that's the extent of the conversation, but we haven't engaged the landowner or anything along those lines yet. Sure.
Anyone else? As we go around? Yes, sir.
We just ended up having a youth turkey hunt this weekend up at Grassy Island. We had 5 kids up there. We harvested 4 turkeys, 3 hogs out of there. I'd like to really thank the district for the opportunity to be able to take these kids out there. It's a really worthwhile project.
Thank you. Very good. Just moving around. Anyone else? Anyone else? Any new topics that you like? Yeah.
I've got something off topic. Well, first of all, thanks for having us here. But off topic, I ended up locking my keys and my phone in my truck when we got here. So if anybody knows a locksmith or has a cell phone I can use afterwards, get with me. So thanks.
Go ahead.
I don't. I don't have anything specific to say, but I'm still having trouble detaching myself from the district. I'm kind of wondering, who am I? Yeah. So anyway, it's a good, and I saw some projects still being finished, which I had started. So I'm glad it's getting done, especially that Single Creek one. So yeah, it's really nice to be back. And although I wear different shirts, T-shirts with different logos now, but I still feel part of the district and would be happy to work for the district through this company maybe, and would love to be in touch with everybody else. And what's that? It is called Arthology. April 30th, I'll keep it on mind and see if I can join that. Thank you.
All around, okay. Steve, you have any final comments before we go to Zoom land?
I just want to thank all the folks that have helped out with the youth hunt. It's a lot of work on your part. You recognize James, but you guys do the heavy lifting out there. You coordinate it, you work with FWC, you do the cooking, the education. Mark was sharing with me how they're doing casting lessons before the alligator hunts to get some of the youths up to speed on casting for alligators. So, I think our part is very small compared to what you all contribute to it, and thank you.
And I also want to make sure everybody really understands that a lot of these children, all these children harvesting birds have never harvested a bird before. Some of them never harvested anything ever before. So just the parent to bring them to the woods and enjoy, as Mike would say, get them to love the land. And that's the most important, get them out there and spend the night. We just did a youth hunt first weekend in December with a group that have never spent the night in the woods. didn't have a tent, they had absolutely nothing, a gun, nothing. So we had to supply them with 2 families with tents, with air mattresses, I mean, the whole 9 yards, guns, the whole thing. So when you bring out those people and you make them woodsmen after them after that, and the one gentleman said, when his daughter said she wanted to go, he told me, he said, I was scared to death. I didn't know what I was getting into. He said, I'm looking forward to these nights and these days and these kind of weekends. So it's really cool to get people out that don't have a clue how it works.
Okay, before I let Drew, I'm gonna finish up myself. Today, we had presentations that took the district from Shingle Creek all the way to Biscayne Bay. And that's what this is about. We get occasionally the horseback riders, occasionally the anglers, occasionally the birders, campers, hikers, bikers, and we like for those people to come when we have especially the stakeholder presentations. So we will be continue to do stakeholder presentations, and everyone's invited to come to this meeting. And the Zoom has been pretty well loaded tonight. With $5 gallon gasoline, that's probably to be expected. So that's what this is all about, Shingle Creek all the way down to the Keys. And everybody that goes out on the district is so generous. There's over 600,000 acres that we are able to go out and enjoy. And a lot of that area is maintained at great expense because you just can't buy a piece of property and let it go to seed in Florida because that's where it'll go real quick. So it's very much appreciated, and we all appreciate it very much. So Drew, if you have some final comments, and then we'll close the meeting.
Sure. All right. Thank you, staff, for, presenting. James, Dan, Steve. You're next to Blaine. Blaine, yeah, you're gonna. So Dan, make sure you give him the tough one next time. But Brad, I appreciate it. Kate, is it Caitlin? Yeah, I appreciate you getting on and presenting. It's a great crowd with great questions and great insights. And so I take a lot from these. I got a lot of notes, got some follow-up. I've been talking with Rory, what about this, what about that? So look forward to the next time. And Yvette, thanks for making this happen. Without you, it would not happen. And Newton, same to you. And I appreciate your perseverance in these issues for so many years.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, that being it, and we made it with plenty of time tonight.